Welcome to The Ring, to this very special edition, broadcasting live here from downtown Brussels. My name is Maeve McMahon and I'm one of the presenters of The Ring, which is our weekly debating show that sees MEPs go face to face on some of the most pressing issues of our time. The topic that we're jumping into today is healthcare and who should pay.
Europe is facing spiraling healthcare costs driven by an aging population and chronic diseases. At the same time, demand for new treatments is growing, raising crucial questions. Who should pay for healthcare innovation, and to what extent is health treated as a business? One key pressure point is the cost of new drugs and vaccines. Should the EU coordinate pricing for essential medicines to ensure equal access across member states, while also having tools to intervene in production and distribution during crises? Or should pricing and supply remain a national responsibility to prevent straining healthcare budgets and weakening market incentives? Tax debates in the pharmaceutical sector further highlight concerns about how much the industry should profit from public investment. Europe also faces longer-term challenges. Its healthcare system spends far more on treatment than prevention. The real question is not only how Europe will pay for healthcare, but what kind of healthcare system it ultimately wants to protect.
Let's meet our panellists.
Tilly Metz, a Luxembourgish MEP from the Greens European Free Alliance Group. She has been a member of the European Parliament since 2018 and serves on the Committee on the Environment, Public Health and Food Safety. In debates on EU health policy, she has advocated for stronger European cooperation on public health and greater transparency in the pharmaceutical sector. We need a strong commitment to solidarity over privatization and to high-quality care over commercialization, she said. Stine Bosse, a Danish MEP from the Liberal Renew Europe group, elected to the European Parliament in 2024, she works on economic and industry-related issues and has spoken about the importance of maintaining Europe's competitiveness and innovation capacity. In discussions about the pharmaceutical sector, she has emphasized the need to balance strong research incentives with sustainable healthcare systems. We must do much more, better and cheaper together, including by creating a single market for clinical trials and by taking more decisions at the European level, she said.
Welcome. So lovely to have you with us here for this very special edition of The Ring. So the idea here, ladies, is to give our viewers back home a bit of a taste of what exactly you get up to inside that European Parliament chamber, here in Brussels and also in Strasbourg. Sometimes you fire questions at each other, sometimes it gets a little bit heated. Today, as you know, we're focusing on healthcare and the future of it right here in the European Union, and who, of course, should pay. So Tilly, if we can start with you on that very, very pertinent question, who should be paying for the future of healthcare in Europe? Should it be us, the patients? Should it be pharma, the governments, big tech? Who?
Yeah, but if we look what the situation is right now, we see there's a lot of public funding indeed going in research, but there's also the patient that is paying. So you could even say that the patient right now is paying twice. He's paying first with taxes, which go then to funds, and then he pays again a price at the pharmacy. So what we need for sure is at the EU level, but also at national level, more public investment. Yeah.
Well, it actually all connects, and I do agree that there is an issue on how do we look into the future. What is the construction? Is it all everybody has access to healthcare, or is it a different model? That has to be debated. But at the end of the day, it all starts and it all ends at the end of the day that we have a strong and competitive pharmaceutical sector, and then we can discuss who pays.
And that's an important point, of course. Tilly Metz, if you look at the data, 1 in every 2 medicines, this is back 25 years ago, was invented or discovered right here in Europe. Now it's only 1 in 6. What went wrong?
Exactly. I mean, if we go more to privatization and more leaving all the leadership to the pharma industry, we see that it doesn't work. Indeed, we still have innovation in Europe, but we are not really scaling up. But if we look innovation and there is no real added value for the patients, that's something we need to do better. So it's up to public authorities to take back their leadership and their responsibility. I mean, if we go more and more in private healthcare, there is a huge risk of even more commercialization of access to healthcare and of commodifying medicines and healthcare.
Would you agree with that point, Stine Bosse?
Yes, I do agree, but I don't think that a strong pharmaceutical sector is the opposite of having a totally sane and fantastic healthcare sector as such. I think these two things go hand in hand. But that is, of course, a question of funding. First of all, importantly enough, funding for the pharmaceutical sector, and then, of course, who pays? Is it tax paid? Is it universal access to treatment and to medicines? Or is it a private sector that we see growing? And there, I think we will have to face that there will be a blend. I am a strong believer in a strong universal healthcare sector that makes sure that there is access for everybody.
I mean, we know that the private sector and the objective of the private sector are not necessarily aligned with what is really the public health need. But I agree, we need a strong pharma sector. We need to have manufacturing back in Europe, and we need to have the conditions. But the incentives for the pharma industry must not rely only on intellectual property rights. There are other models, other alternatives of incentives. There needs to be a better coordination from the public authority in order to make it more equal.
And this issue of scaling up, how can we do better here? I mean, in Europe, we're great at research, we're great in the lab, but getting it to market then is always the big challenge.
Yeah, and there I tend to disagree. So without letting go of the security level for our citizens, we should base much more on our EMA and less on our national entities. Because if you look at it, it is 578 days from the approval of a medicine till it in EMA till it reaches the patient.
And on the European Medicines Agency, we'll come back to that point.
I didn't say that it should not be the European Medicines Agency. I'm very pro-European. On contrary, we need better cooperation between the member states, and that can only be done at European level. I mean, on that I agree with you.
And is the European Union ready for the next big pandemic? Because we know it's coming. I mean, we remember those terrible days of COVID, and we're being warned that the next pandemic is around the corner. Stine Bosse, is the EU ready for this?
No. I mean, we are more prepared than we were. I mean, we have learned, and the institutions are also now stronger, and health is a stronger issue. You know, the fact that we now have the health committee, and it's a full committee, and so on. All these things point in the right direction.
That's not reassuring our viewers, just having a committee.
No. I agree. And here I'm back to that we need also a stronger collaboration between countries within the Union. We need links also for ongoing healthcare, not only on the innovation side, but also on the delivery side, also between the hospitals. There's so many things that we can do a lot better and cheaper together if we work pan-European on these subjects.
But I think one thing that we definitely learned from the pandemic is that we are over-reliant to the pharma industry. So we need the public sector to take more responsibilities again and to have a better coordination. To be too reliant to the pharma industry, I mean, that gives a lot of insecurities also regarding the supply chain, regarding the transparency on the real cost on research and development. I mean, I'm not against a strong pharma industry, but we must definitely also consider to have a European infrastructure on research and on production also of medicine. And I think we need to be ambitious there in order not to be too reliant and dependent only on the private sector, where we all agree that they have different objectives, and that is also perfectly okay. I mean, as I say, they are not necessarily aligned with what is really an added value of the medication. That's why there are certain sectors, like the orphan medicines, but also the antibiotics, where the pharma industry is not really interested because it's not really financially interested. So the objectives are different, and that's where we need a stronger public leadership, of public authority.
That's the view from Tilly Metz. Let's hear your view there.
You might have recalled that I'm not a socialist, but I do have a lot of social responsibility within the way I think about our citizens. So I cannot see, Tilly, that we should go for a fantastic publicly owned pharmaceutical sector. I think we need a strong, privately owned, privately financed pharmaceutical sector who can see the benefits of staying in Europe, developing in Europe, and delivering in Europe.
And we also, of course, want to hear from you. You can always write to us at thering@euronews.com. We'll come back to it.
Okay.
Now it is time for our viewers to get a real taste of Inside the Chamber, when MEPs actually fire questions at each other. So now I'd like you to start with your first question for Tilly Metz.
Well, Tilly, I just want to know, how on earth are you going to make sure that we can be able, from Europe, to deliver the best, the newest medicines, the fastest to our citizens? What is your prescription for that?
I think it's very clear that we need to give incentives to the pharma industry and, on the other hand, to have kind of safe net by a public infrastructure in order to have innovation and to guarantee also accessibility to innovation to everybody. We need to put conditions on this public funding, and we need public authorities to play their role on asking accountability to the pharma industry and on asking transparency on the R&D costs, but also on how they develop their prices. I mean, as I said at the very beginning, it cannot be that the patient pays 2 times or 3 times, once by the data, once by the taxes that he pays, and then again a high price at the pharmacy.
Are you satisfied with that answer, or would you like to follow up?
No, because I still see that there is a high risk with all your good ideas. Some of them we can agree on, but there is a high risk that the pharmaceutical sector would look to other grounds and say, you know, it's much more attractive to us to develop and to invest in the US, for example. So bye-bye. I don't see
you agree with the US system, where indeed the pharma industry wants to put very much higher prices. I mean, that's what they want. That's why they are attracted by the market in the US. Is that the model that we should aim at?
No.
Where only an elite can offer treatment and have innovation access and innovative healthcare? No, I think we must definitely take our responsibility, and that is one of the lessons learned from the pandemic. And that is, Stine, that's what we are working on. The Critical Medicines Act is exactly what we are doing there. We are making that the EU takes more responsibility in coordination what is critical medicine for the citizens and what is really also of an added value, and how we can bring back manufacturing again back to Europe. That's what we are working on the Critical Medicines Act.
And our viewers can read more about that Critical Medicines Act on euronews.com. But now, Tilly Metz, it is time for you to address your very first question to Stine Bosse.
Yeah, but my very first question, I said it already a little bit, is like, do you agree, in order to have accessibility and affordability on medicine, that we need to have more transparency on cost? And that is meaning, when we give public funding to the pharma industry, that we need to put conditions on this public funding. Conditions like supply chain, transparency on cost, etc.
I think, first of all, and I will be repeating myself slightly, so bear with me, I think that it's the starting point will be that we have a strong pharmaceutical sector. And you might not agree. You think you jump right into it has to be state-owned and it has to be state-funded. I'm on another page there. Then, having said that, then I agree that there are areas, the Critical Medicines Act is a good example, but there are also other areas where we have to think differently as Europeans, but also as countries. And that's why this thing about the nearly 600 days to approval, that we have to get out. We need to make sure that the country's level of approval is not there. It doesn't make any difference. And then on top of that, if we say to ourselves that there's an 80% difference between the countries of the accessibility to medicines, of course that cannot be so. So we have a huge issue at our hands to level this out between countries and to protect our universal health care. But that is only protected if we have earnings. Earnings makes taxes. Taxes makes the money to actually finance healthcare.
I know you had another long list of questions for each other, but we will have to wrap it there because we've now heard from our MEPs, and I would really like to bring in another voice here. I would like to bring in the voice now of the head of AstraZeneca, the CEO and executive director, that's Pascal Soriot. He recently said that the pharma industry in Europe will be reduced to a shadow of itself within 15 years. He said this due to two major threats facing the pharma industry. One, pharma companies are investing heavily in the US to avoid heavy taxes by the Trump administration. And of course, the other elephant in the room, China is of course the leader in generics and a major competitor when it comes to innovation medicines. So Tilly Metz, I'm curious to hear your view here on the concerns of the industry and of the CEO there of AstraZeneca.
First of all, what I want to correct, because it seems like I want 100% only state-owned pharma industry. That is wrong. I just want a safe net that is public in order to guarantee that we are not 100% reliant. But the pharma industry has an important role to play. And I spoke about incentives. I'm just convinced, and we see it in the reality, if we are pragmatic, we see in the reality leaving it all to the pharma industry that the system doesn't work because we have shortage of medicine, etc. What I said before. But we need other incentives like the subscription model, where you know if you work on research, for example on antibiotics, that you get the fixed amount of money in order to work on that. That is one model, or a milestone model. So,
and Stine Bosse, if I can just bring you in here, I mean, is it scaremongering what he says there, or would you agree with it? Because I mean,
no, I agree
still
with
the home to big pharma.
And I think it's actually more serious than we can dream of. We are, and this is a little bit dramatic, but it's good on television. We are under attack. I mean, our pharmaceutical sector is under attack. This idea of the nation, most favored nation legislation that the administration in the US put in place is really, really hammering us. And I'm not saying that we should give up, and I agree with you on the fact that there should be a basis coverage, obviously, for citizens in Europe, also regarding the safety of the approvals. But we have to understand that we must fight this with giving terms and conditions to our pharmaceutical sector that can compete with this, in my opinion, very mean model, and that we have to fight back.
Would you agree with this, what she calls a very dramatic statement?
Let's look what is at the center of our concerns. And I am allowing myself to say that it is different as a politician than from the pharma industry perspective. At the center of our concern is the patient. If you look at the situation of the patients in the United States, they are in a much worse health situation. If you look mental health, if you look obesity, if you look at a lot of diseases, suicide, everything, they are in a much worse case. What do I have from innovation if it's not accessible for the large public? And in innovation, we are not bad in Europe. It's in scaling up, it's in manufacturing where we are leaking.
And we have a very fragmented market as well, Stine Bosse.
Sure, we have this fragmented market, and we have really not a capitals union, right? So we need also the fact that investors should have a investors and companies much easier access to capital to make them stay here. We also have to face, Tilly, that no matter how we turn this around, there needs to be a strong sector here. We need to understand what the problems is for the sector, try and solve them, and then, of course, fight back to the US, because I agree, even longevity is much better in Europe. And we should not give up on these areas, but it's not on the contrary to have a strong sector. And then it comes back to the first question, who is paying? And there I think there is a need for a truly and deep discussion on transparency, on how do we actually fund, because our model, look, our model is like 80% gets everything, right? We covered a lot of people. That's why we buy a lot of pharmaceutical products. at a cheap price. In the US, not a lot of people are covered, so they pay much more per pill. So that makes it completely uncomparable. And that we have to sit down and really investigate and find out, also in the Biotech Act, how are we going to solve this?
So you have a lot to do, ladies, but now it is time, in fact, for our next round. Now I'd like to bring in some figures. There is a big problem when it comes to Europeans having to wait for new medicines. The EU average is about 578 days. That's from approval to patient access. And it varies from country to country. Yeah. Patients in some countries have to wait 7 times longer than others. While the fastest is in Germany at 128 days, Portuguese patients wait the longest. So your reaction here to this inequality?
Yeah, this is completely how it is. But of course, there is an explanation. It's not because Portugal wants to have a longer period for the population. It's about finances. It's about, can they afford it? And here we are, of course, entering into very, very difficult discussions, because a country like Denmark, if you compare us to Bulgaria, to Romania, then we are in for big, there's a big difference. And that we need to, over time, solve. But one of the ways to do it is to, again, what we can make better and cheaper together, we must, including the EMA, to save all the money in all the countries.
And the irony is, in Germany, 128 days, that's supposed to be quick. I mean, that's a matter of life and death if you have to wait that long for your pills.
Yes.
Yeah, indeed. And what we need also is we need more cooperation in European procurement, so that we buy together, in order also with strict timeline and also with the security on the supply chain. So that's, again, we need to give more incentives, that is true, but that goes hands in hand with conditions of supply chain, etc. And we need, of course, on that I agree with Stine Bosse, we need also to give the EMA, the European Medicines Agency, more human resources and more resources in general, in order to be more efficient, and then that we need less and less also there to rely on national issues.
And should there be an EU-wide pricing for essential medicines?
I think at the end of the day we will get into that area. I don't see that we can avoid having some kind of more transparency and more central discussed pricing.
Because now when you go to your doctor, sometimes they say go to France, you can get.
Yeah. That's why I say. But I had this conversation with, you can probably guess who it is, but it was a CEO of a large Danish pharmaceutical company, and I said to him, I don't worry when I go in a shop and I buy, like say H&M. And I buy something, and I can see the price in Sweden, in Germany, in France, and I'm still happy paying with my, unfortunately, it's still Danish kroner. So I think we should be more transparent, we should be more bold together with the industry, and they are also, at least some of them, maturing in that direction, of course also because of the big threat that we have just debated from the outside.
Now, we definitely need to put public interest is definitely more important, especially in the health sector, than commercial interest. I mean, at the very end, the very famous company, pharma industry that produced drugs, in the last moment, the price was really increasing again. Why? All the research, all the R&D was done, so we need definitely transparency. And as I said, that goes hand in hand with also public funding. It's something we owe to the taxpayers, we owe to the citizens to ask for this transparency. And especially when we speak of a fundamental right, which is access to health care.
Because as you said twice or 3 times or 4 times already here in the programme, consumers are paying twice, patients are paying twice. This is a big problem.
Well, I'm not sure I agree completely on the fact that people are paying twice. I agree that there is a debate on how can we make this more transparent. But to be honest, I mean, the pharmaceutical sector invests a lot, and they should. And I also agree that in some areas they should also be held accountable. You know, if there is public money involved, yes, I agree on that.
Shall we speak about the benefits that they made with the COVID-19?
Yes, but look, then on the other hand, of course, there is large number of workplaces innovation, attracting skilled people, and all this is also beneficial for Europe. It's not only it's not a non-sum thing. We have to look at the total, and I think it would be devastating if we lost the last industry, ladies and gentlemen, the last industry where we are still close to, not even, but close to on par with the US and China. We lost digital industry. So do we want in 10 years from now to have a pharmaceutical sector where we said that's history, it's gone?
And on the digital industry, that's of course for another episode of The Ring. We'll have to wrap it up there because I would love to move on to the fifth and very last round of this very special edition of The Ring, which is focusing on the future of healthcare. Ladies, are you ready?
Yeah.
Excellent, because you need all your wits about you for this last segment, because it's a little bit different. You only are allowed to answer using yes or no. Does that sound good?
That sounds good.
Great, let's do it. Stine Bosse, let's begin with you. Should the EU cap prices for essential medicines, yes or no?
Can I have a yes, but?
Very briefly.
Yes, but it has to be limited to very, very special situations and very special medicines.
Okay, let's see if you can do a yes or no here.
Yes, it's a fundamental right. Access to fundamental medicines is a fundamental right. And
another question coming for you both. Tilly, I will start with you. Should Brussels negotiate drug prices for all EU member states?
I think that would be a strength if we do that. We saw at the COVID-19 that negotiating together gives us more power. So yes.
So that's a yes. What about you? Yes or no on this one?
Down the road, it will be a yes from me also.
Should patents be waived during major health crises?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the patients, and this is...
You say yes, Stine?
I say yes to the fact that we're politicians, we need to keep our main focus on the patients. No doubt about that.
And now a question you're both going to love. Should medicines be the same price all across the European Union?
That's a long way to go there, but that would be coherent if we listen to the European citizens that want more healthcare and also
so that's a big yes, a resounding yes. What about you?
I mean, it goes hand in hand with what I just answered. So if you have a procurement way down the road that is common European, then of course you also have a transparent common pricing.
And just finally, is the future of EU health and innovation bright?
Yes. I'm a strong believer in the EU as such, and of course also in this sector, but we have to get a lot of our act together.
And what about you, yes or no? Bright future or not? Yes or no?
Bright future, yes, because we should listen to the citizens and we should put more funding and not cut the funding.
Tilly Metz, did you agree with anything you've heard?
Yes, she said that we should waiver the intellectual property rights during a pandemic.
There you go. You see, it's here on The Ring where we get people to talk, disagree, and sometimes agree. Thank you so much, and a round of applause for our two MEPs on The Ring, Stine Bosse and Tilly Metz.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we love to hear from you. Write to us at thering@euronews.com and stay with us here on Euronews.